Howdy, howdy, this is Mr. Potter. I want to talk a little bit about when you get a 3D printer, one of the things that you really want to do when you start off is make sure that your bed is level so that the prints come out level. But one of the next things you want to do is you want to start working on some diagnostic prints. So I've got a couple of examples of some diagnostic prints, some things you'll want to do when you first get your printer set up. So the first thing I've got here is a calibration cube. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what a calibration cube is. It's going to print on the X, Y, and Z axis, and it's going to show you basically how well each direction is going. So you can see on here I've got a little bit of work here where it's got some like bubbling here at the edges. Basically whenever it turns this corner, the head stops, and so it because it stops, it deposits a little bit more plastic. You're going to have a little bit of that at the corners, a little bit more extrusion at the corners. And so it's just something you need to watch out for. Otherwise, though, I mean, what you're looking for is like in the case of this Z up here. Let's see if I can get this to focus. In the case of this Z, what you want to do is check the infill, make sure everything's filled in correctly, there aren't any gaps, make sure that the lines are solid. You want to do this basically for each of these directions, the X, the Y, and the Z direction. And of course, the other three faces are blank. But they'll give you an idea of how well you're adhering to the base and how well it's doing the sides. So that's one of the first things you really want to do. What a lot of people do for their second build is a benchy. It's basically a benchmark to tell you how well your printer is able to do a lot of the tasks that printers are expected to do. So the boat basically sits flat on your bed like this. It's going to print from the bottom up, of course, and it's going to test several things. So, for example, at the bottom, you'll notice it says CT 3D XYZ. So it's going to have a message written down here at the bottom. As it's building, this overhang's not going to be supported, so you get to see how well it does with unsupported overhangs. As it builds across here, it's going to have to bridge across, and so you can see how well the bridging is going to be at this top part of the boat, as well as does it have a lot of excess strings as it goes across. You're going to see how well it does straight lines, how well it does curves, how well it does circles, and you can kind of get a glance of how much detail you can get with the really small details, like this little small circle here, or the smokestack up here at the top. So it's a really good benchmark to kind of see how your printer is going and what things you can do to make your printer more effective. And then another third thing I found, and I'm going to have links to all of these down in the description. This is actually what it does is it tests the tolerances. So actually this thing prints out in one piece, and as it prints out, it's going to have different tolerances here. And because it prints in one piece, some of the pieces may start off stuck, but there's a certain amount of space between these pieces here. So for example, this center one, it's 0.5 millimeters between the spaces, and I can actually turn this relatively freely. Basically, I've got pretty good spinning action here. Other ones turn a little bit more rough. This one's 0.4, and then I haven't gotten any of the other ones past this to turn. But what you can do if you tweak the settings on your printer, you can actually get more and more of a finer detail between the surfaces that it prints. And so if you can get those spaces, then you can get a lot of these prints that are self-contained, and that might be something basically it's something fun to print. And then the last thing I want to talk about is when you get different filaments, you'll probably want to print off little sample chips of them. The main reason is because you may find a particular filament that you like, and you want to remember, okay, what brand was it? Because oftentimes when I'm looking for filament on Amazon, I'll look for the cheapest filament I can. So this black filament is Yo-Yi PLA. It's black and it's 1.75 millimeter. But what I do this because this particular brand is a really good red that I liked. This blue is a really nice blue that I got. This is it says it's a fluorescent pink, but it's really more of an iridescent pink. It's not really fluorescent. But if I want this exact color from this company, I need to remember that they call it fluorescent pink. Just like I need to remember that if I want it from this company, I need to remember that they call this cyan. even though it's more of almost like a fluorescent green. Just something I need to be aware of. Now, one thing I did, and I'll have a link to this in the description as well, I made these little chips. They're just little cubes. But the first thing I did is that I oriented it flat down, just building up like this. And if you look at the printing here, you can see that the printing's not very accurate. This is my first black chit that I made. And then this is the second one that I made. And the difference between these, if I can get the writing to show up, you can see the writing on this one over here is a lot clearer. And that's because when I printed it, I actually printed it standing up so that my base was down here. So it was actually printing upwards like this. And that got me a lot more detail between the letters here. And so being able to get that detail between the letters is going to make that more legible. It's just something you may want to be aware of when you're doing your prints, that as you print, you may want your details to be on the sides vertically going up rather than having the top being the where your details are. It's just something that I found effective when I was printing these things out. So, hope you enjoy your printer. Once again, this is Mr. Potter. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.